only, as I understand it, what is allowed by the CTA, then in fact they risk damaging the confidence and the reliability of supply from this country. So it's absolutely critical. The Minister has given the number of licences that he's issued. He should also be aware that a number of these are for super trawlers over 100 metres, for fly shooters, that he has given away access to non-quota species without limit, and that this is on top of a cooperation and trade agreement that allowed access to the 6 to 12-mile limits, which was not what was promised. So when he has given away so much already, why is he risking this over such a small number of small boats that we must always have known would struggle to get the data to justify the creation of track record?
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I think what the honourable gentleman is saying in a nutshell is, shouldn't we just roll over and accept these vessels even though they don't qualify? I mean, the position of the government is there were very clearly agreed terms in the trade and cooperation agreement. Any vessel that qualifies has been granted access, and that includes many vessels, close to 1,700 in our exclusive economic zone. But I don't agree that we should take an approach that says, well, we should just let in these people for an easy life. The reality is that these vessels didn't have a track record in our waters. And it isn't just about data. We've been open to considering data. We've looked at the Valpina chart data that has come from the European Commission. Because the French were struggling at one point to provide the data, the UK government actually went into the commercial market and bought AIS data for some of the French vessels so that we could help understand their application better. And so the data is available in many cases. We've sought to be as helpful as we can to assist the EU in providing that data. But if they're unable to provide that data, there comes a point when you have to assume that they probably did not access during the reference period.
Bob Seeley.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his actions, and I urge him to hold fast to make sure that we and the French obey the rule of law. My question, if the French government, clearly under Monsieur Macron's need to get re-elected and sort of attack us as part of that, keeps threatening us and frankly abusing their power, I don't understand why we can't be gently encouraging our exporters to use non-French ports and to move our supply lines potentially to people who are not going to play politics with the economy, both of the European Union but also the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I think, look, if obviously the French did carry through that threat, well, then individual businesses would make decisions about how best to get their goods to market. But I think the important thing is we very much hope that they won't. We don't think it's consistent with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. It probably isn't consistent with the official control regime under EU law. The official control regime exists to manage risks, and it's a risk-based regime. It is not there really to be used to try for retaliation, as it's being described.
Karen Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, isn't it really time now to get rid of Lord Frost? He continues to damage the relationship. He's obviously got a lot of friends, presumably that's why he's there. He continues to damage the relationship with Ireland, our nearest neighbours. The Falkland Islanders still have not an agreement about their tariffs because of the lack of agreement with the Spanish, and now this long-running brewing dispute with the French continues. The Secretary of State talks about constructive discussions, but clearly, with Lord Frost at the helm, continuing to destroy these relationships, that's not possible.
Secretary of State.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's an absolute nonsense what the honourable lady said. I work closely with the noble Lord Frost. He's a very able negotiator. He stands up for the interests of our country in these discussions, and I can also assure has very good relations with the negotiators that he deals with from the European Union.
Michael Fabric.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I commend to the House an excellent history book called 1,000 Years of Annoying the French. This is nothing new. This has been going on for hundreds, if not 1,000 years. But my right honourable friend has mentioned the role of the European Union, and the European Union always claimed that they are an organisation based on rules. What conversations has he had with the Commission or Commissioners regarding this dispute?
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I spoke to Commissioner Virginia Sinkevicius yesterday to discuss this issue and the general licensing issue, and did ask him whether what was being suggested was consistent with EU law under the official control regime, but also the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Expressed our view that we felt it was not consistent with either. He obviously at that point hadn't had a chance to discuss the matter with the French, but undertook to do so.
Cat Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I do hope in your recent visit to Lancashire for the G7 Speakers Conference you got to enjoy our Morecambe Bay potted shrimps and Fleetwood fish. Indeed, much of the UK fishing industry is made up of small-scale fishers and fish processors. So can I ask the Secretary of State what the mechanisms proposed in the EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement to resolve these kind of disputes, whether or not those are being used at the moment to resolve this dispute?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The answer at the moment is that we are applying what was agreed, so there doesn't need to be further technical groups on this. We do have very close relations with the European Commission, and we are at official level sharing all of our methodology with them. For the vessels that we've not so far been able to grant a licence to, we've shown precisely the data that we have or don't have that means that is the case. And we continue to work very closely with the European Commission on identifying vessels that might qualify.
Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the threats that we've heard from the French this week has been about the electricity supply to the people of Jersey. I am glad that the Minister is speaking to the European Union. Would he confirm that he will make it quite clear that threatening the electricity supply in this kind of dispute is wholly outside of the terms of the TCA and wholly unacceptable from a close and trusted ally?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And look, the UK government will stand squarely behind Jersey on this matter. As I said, we've worked closely with them on their methodology for issuing licences, and we believe they entirely are consistent with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and that they've been reasonable throughout. So yes, as I said earlier, we do think that the threats that France has made are disappointing and disproportionate, not what we would expect from an ally, and we also believe that they're not compatible with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank and commend the Secretary of State for his fortitude and his strong and firm stance. What steps will the Secretary of State take to ensure that British fleets are able to fish in British waters and not to be concerned that they may have strayed just marginally into French waters and then be detained whilst watching copious numbers of the French fleet fish at will in British waters with no similar harsh justice? Because he allows them.
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And under the terms of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, I think that's unlikely, and that the vessels are able to enter one another's exclusive economic zone, and licences have been issued for that. Most of these remaining issues pertain to the 6 to 12 mile zone in English waters only, not in Scottish waters. Mostly vessels know where they are, in my experience. They have pretty accurate chart-plotted data.
Andrew Barry.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I wish the Secretary of State and his officials well as they grapple with a fast-evolving and complicated situation. Does he agree with me that today, with the Scottish National Party, the mask really did slip? When it came to a choice between working with us to stand up for the interests and rights of Scottish fishermen or scoring cheap political points, they chose cheap political points and pointing the finger every single time.
Secretary of State.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I think all I can say is that the UK government absolutely stands squarely behind the Scottish fishing industry, always has done. That's why we supported the wishes of the Scottish industry to leave the common fisheries policy, and we'll always continue to support the interests of Scottish fishing.
Lillian Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Clearly this is an extremely worrying time for the UK fishing fleet, especially for small fishers who simply cannot afford to face a disruption on their trade. What is the government doing to encourage people to buy homegrown seafood, and what action is he taking to support fishers who are trying to sell directly to consumers?
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And during the pandemic, there was a fall in the price of many species of fish as restaurants and the catering trade closed. I can now say that with things reopening again, the price of fish has bounded back and is in a very strong position at the moment. During the pandemic, we did run a number of schemes in conjunction with Seafish to promote greater consumption of fish at home.
Peter Aldous.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The non-enforcement this year of total allowable catches for non-quota species in UK waters has not only undermined our own inshore fleet, but it may also have sent out the signal that the UK will not enforce rules designed to promote sustainable fishing and our own domestic industry. And this might have played a contributory role in leading up to these incidents. I would be grateful if my right honourable friend could confirm that these TACs will be enforced this coming year.
Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't think, in fact, that there's a connection between the approach taken on non-quota stocks, for which there was specific provision in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and this particular issue, which is very specifically about certain vessels that don't qualify for access to our waters. However, on the point that he raised, this is something that we will be discussing again with the European Commission at the next annual negotiations, the UK-EU bilateral, and it remains our position that yes, there must be some limits set on those particular species for non-quota stock species, and we'll be seeking to progress that next year.
Margaret Farrier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The chairman of the Regional Fisheries Committee in northern France has indicated that his members could block UK products being exported through the Calais port and Channel Tunnel. We have already seen how strained our supply chains are. What discussions has the Secretary of State had with his Cabinet colleagues about the potential impact of this move, and what steps will be taken to mitigate that?
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Obviously, this is a situation that arose yesterday, but has been brewing probably for the last fortnight. I have had regular discussions with some of my Cabinet colleagues, most notably the Noble Lord Frost, on this matter because of the position that he has on the wider negotiations. But I would point out that, as I said earlier, there are 736 French vessels that have been licensed to fish in our waters. We've behaved very reasonably on this issue throughout.
Craig Williams.
I reassure the Secretary of State that we have absolute confidence in the Noble Lord Frost on this side of the chamber. Can I welcome his reassurance that at all times we have acted with the TCA, and having met the Jersey government and seen the data firsthand, the GPS data, I echo their pleas for the French governments and the Commission to publish publicly anything they disagree with. Given France gave up sovereignty over this policy area to the European Commission, can I ask the Secretary of State to reassure us that the Commission will not support any break in the law of the TCA from France unilaterally?
Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy, my honourable friend makes a very important point. It is because France is an EU member state. It is, of course, for the European Commission to speak for France on these matters. And that is why our first port of call in these discussions is with the European Commission, who have the legal viaries to represent France on fisheries matters. What I would say is, as we all know, the European Union takes its laws very seriously, and I hope will therefore ensure that its member states abide by them.
Andrew Bridgen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that the predictably disproportionate, unreasonable behaviour of the French authorities in these matters is inexorably linked to the fact that President Macron's facing very difficult elections next year, and therefore we should expect matters to get worse before they get better, and that history shows that this House and our great nation's interests are best served by standing up to the threats of little Napoleons clinging on to power.
Secretary of State.
Well, I note what my honourable friend says, but I would simply say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm a bit more optimistic on this, in that I think in this job we always have to hope that things will get better, and get better now rather than get worse before they get better.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It may be fair, it may be unfair, but over the last 50 years, probably more, fishing communities around the UK have lacked confidence in successive governments that they would be robust enough in the defence of the interests of the fishing community. Whilst I understand my right honourable friend doesn't want to escalate the present situation, can he give an assurance that we will be extremely robust in defending the interests of fishing communities around the UK?
Secretary of State.
Well, my honourable friend raised an important point, although it's important also to point out that over the last 50 years, no UK government has had the legal right to defend its interests properly in fisheries, since the common fisheries policy meant that this is a policy area ceded to the European Union. But the UK government believes passionately in our fishing industry. It's one of the great opportunities of leaving the European Union, and that's why we will, of course, be supporting our fishermen during this difficult time.
Leonici.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Secretary of State says, this is extremely disappointing. But when I talk to constituents in Great Grimsby, if we were going to actually describe this in an emoji, I think it would be the rolling eyes emoji, because we expect nothing other, sadly, of French politicians to do this to us. But this is extremely concerning, not only for the trawlers in Grimsby, but also our fish processors who export out. But we need to make sure that we are balancing in what we're doing, but also to make sure, as other colleagues have said, that we are being robust, and that can he assure me that he is going to say to the EU and to France that we won't be bullied, and it's about time they started working with us as allies and not enemies.
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we've been clear with the European Commission that we are abiding by the terms of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and expect them to do the same.
Rob Butler.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Further to the comments from my right honourable friend on the threats to cut electricity to Jersey, can he reassure people throughout the Channel Islands who are understandably somewhat concerned this morning that the UK will stand solidly with the Crown dependencies in the face of any intimidation from France, whether it's about fishing or indeed any other topic?
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy, yes, of course.
Duncan Baker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The British people do not take kindly to provocation and intensely dislike the threats from other nations. If the French are so keen on impounding boats, perhaps they could focus on the real issue, which is the hundreds of migrants illegally crossing the Channel day in, day out on small dinghies. Would my right honourable friend agree that France's threats are disproportionate and not at all what we'd expect from a close ally and partner?
Secretary of State.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree that they're disproportionate and not what you would expect of a close ally, as I said in my opening remarks, and I'm glad that my honourable friend was listening.
Thank you. We now come to the business question. Tangham Debonair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To ask the Leader of the House for the forthcoming business.
Lord President of the Council.
Thank you.